Lost Boys is the greatest horror comedy of all time. In the early 80s, it occurred to somebody in Hollywood that slashers were actually funny. Even that bedroom kill in John Carpenter's respectably serious Halloween was kinda silly. The Friday the 13th films kept getting goofier and goofier until Jason Voorhees went into space. But parody horror films like Student Bodies tended to fall flat. You don't really need to make something funny when it's already intrinsically funny, albeit in a Pauline Kael sort of way.
It is recognized that you have a funny sense of fun.
Lost Boys got this right. You place likable, witty characters into a genuine horror movie. It feels like Pretty in Pink, but with heartfelt teen angst and clever banter, just set in the vampire capital of California. A recently divorced mom and her 2 kids move to Santa Carla, a fictionalized version of Santa Cruz.
Are you telling me that we moved to the murder capital of the world?
The younger son, Sam, played by Corey Haim, tries to find his place in this low-rent beach town, but his suburban MTV-learned ways make him stick out like a sore thumb.
Pretty cool, huh?
For a fashion victim.
His brother Michael, on the other hand, takes to Santa Carla like a duck to water. Within 24 hours, he hooks up with a local hippie girl, pierces his ear, and joins the local vampire biker gang. The vampires are, of course, the titular Lost Boys. According to the film's editor, the great Paul Hirsch, the original script had them as a gang of child vampires up against child vampire hunters, something much more like Monster Squad.
It's the attack of Eddie Munster!
But throwing in a sexy Kiefer Sutherland and his hairband buddies made all the difference.
Be excellent to each other.
And turned this into a teen goth fantasy. The makeup and wardrobe in this movie are what 80s alternative teens wished they had looked like. That opening song, Cry Little Sister, is dark, heavy cheese. And the Echo and the Bunnymen cover of People Are Strange is absolutely perfect. As is typical of goth fare, there's a fascination with childhood. In this case, the movie turns Peter Pan into a horror film. The vampire leader David promises the local youth that they never need to grow up. Michael and Sam are clearly John and Michael from Peter Pan, and when the script was being developed, Jamie Kurtz's hippie Star was meant to be their Wendy. But in a much more emotional twist, it turns out the boy's actual mother, played by the funny and broken-hearted Diane Weiss, is Wendy. The real head vampire Max has been grooming her into the brood to be the Lost Boy's mother.
I haven't changed my mind about that.
In its get the gang together and defeat this otherworldly threat aspect, Lost Boys has a lot more in common with Goonies than any horror film. The 2 Coreys, along with Jameson Newlander, mount a series of assaults on the vampire clan. Surprisingly, the boys are fairly successful, killing all but 2 of the highest-ranking vampires.
We trash the one that looks like Twisted Sister.
In comedy-laced action scenes.
Death by stereo.
Horror and comedy flow together fluidly because the serious horror scenes with David, Star, and Michael butt up against the antics of the young vampire hunters. By the way, props to the actual owners of the Santa Cruz comic shop where it's filmed, who cameo as the Frog Brothers' stoned parents in the background. If this movie has anything going for it besides the sexy teen goth aesthetic, it's comedy.
Okay, let's go to town. Well, we having fun or what?
I thought we were going to town.
That's as close to town as I like to get.
And the funniest thing in the film is Grandpa. Okay, the second funniest. Grandpa, played by Barnard Hughes, is a man who lives entirely by his own rules.
We got some rules around here. Second shelf is mine.
And doesn't care if they make sense to anybody else.
On Wednesdays, when the mailman brings a TV guide, sometimes the address label is curled up just a little like that. Now, you'll be tempted to tear it off. Don't. You'll only wind up ripping the cover, and I don't like that.
But the best thing about Grandpa is that everything he says in this movie is true.
If all the corpses buried around here was to stand up all at once, we'd have one hell of a population problem.
You have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. You don't need a TV.
Back when Gothic literature became a thing in the 18th and 19th centuries, the genre hinted at lusty sub-ego stresses beneath the surface of everyday life. In The Castle of Otranto or Fall of the House of Usher, it was the curse of aristocratic inbreeding. In Frankenstein, it's a man suppressing his dark desires as he tries to cast himself as God. In Dracula, it's the foreign other coming over here to take our women, and so on. In Lost Boys, there's definitely an 80s love-hate relationship with the post-punk era. Is the vampire's aesthetic cool or threatening? And the psychosexual fears of Dracula are certainly here. Star may be David's girl, but David pushes her towards Michael, hoping that she'll kill him and take her vampire virginity.
You're supposed to be my first. That's what David wanted.
And Max directly expresses the difficulty of a boy seeing his mother wrapped into relationships with somebody who's not their own father.
I'm not trying to replace your father or steal your mother away from you. I would just like to be your friend, that's all.
But the main thread in Lost Boys is that when exposed to new territory, these outsiders can immediately see the evil that lurks beneath the cultural calm. It's entirely possible that back home, equally disturbing things were happening, but Sam and Michael wouldn't have noticed them. In Santa Carla, as outsiders, they immediately smell that something's wrong.
Is there any jobs around here?
Nothing legal.
And they sense what's great in Santa Carla. Good comic book stores, hot hippie chicks, diverse weirdos, Grandpa's car. In its way, Lost Boys is a great Hegelian movie.
How much you think we should charge him for this?
The brothers learn who they are because for the first time they're confronted with the other. Encountering a culture that's foreign to them makes them recognize what matters the most, their tiny nuclear family. They also notice things about Santa Carla that the locals seem not to think about. Cops and punks on the boardwalk consider the Lost Boys a band of goths, but it takes less than a day for Michael and Sam to realize they're actually dealing with vampires. People are strange when you're a stranger, as the man says, and their otherness lets the brothers see with fresh eyes. As Grandpa, himself a transplant to Santa Carla, says,
One thing about living in Santa Carla I never could stomach. All the damn vampires.